as you can see, we have quite a large panel. So it's going to be very challenging for our moderator to keep all this in the foreseen timing. But we've heard we need innovative deals in health tech. So it's very important we also talk about M&A and how new licensing will help. I'll leave the floor to Anne-France MOREAU. She's a life science partner at McDermott, Will and Emery, and she's going to lead this panel. Welcome to you and good luck.
Many thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anne-France MOREAU. I'm partner in the life science department of the law firm McDermott, Will and Emery. Today, we are going to discuss on the innovation through the M&A and licensing opportunities for the health tech companies. I'm so delighted to moderate this roundtable, and thank you to the HTAD team for these opportunities. As you know, the financial market conditions are really challenging, and we observe strong pressure on the financial visibility for many companies. However, in parallel, we can see that the innovation trends remain very strong in all subsegments of the healthcare industry. Thus, could we see an impact on the dynamic and relationship between pharma and biotech and medtech? And could we imagine creative arrangements between these actors? So we will try to answer these general questions thanks to our very great panel. I'm sincerely delighted to have Elena COLLUCCELli-GUERIN, Iordanis ARZIMANOGLOU, Hubert CHAPERON, Nicolas POIRIER, and Antoine KHALLOUF. Panel, I let you introduce yourself.
Ça marche? Okay. Hi to everyone. So I introduce myself quickly. Elena COLLUCCELli, Managing Director in the Paris office of Rothschild, doing M&A advisory in the healthcare sector, and doing this for almost 23 years. And Antoine is also part of our team. He will introduce himself.
So hi, Nicolas POIRIER. I'm CEO of Immunotherapeutics. We are a clinical stage biotech. We developed immunotherapies, first-in-class immunotherapies in oncology and inflammation. And we have quite some experience now with deal with pharma. So we are here also to provide our biotech perspective in this deal structure.
Hi everyone, Antoine KHALLOUF. I'm a director in the healthcare group at Rothschild, working closely with Elena and the rest of the team. Been focusing on biotech mainly for the past 12 years.
Hi, I'm Hubert CHAPERON. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Owkin. Owkin is an AI biotech company making the promise of precision medicine a reality for patients. So we use patient data and AI to build on the 3 pillars of precision medicine, discovering novel targets and therapeutics, optimizing clinical trials, and then diagnostics to match patients with the right treatments.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. Iordanis ARZIMANOGLOU from the European Innovation Council, responsible for health and biotechnology. It's a new institution still in Brussels, and background, I'm a medical molecular geneticist, having worked in the States primarily in research and also in Europe as senior management.
Many thanks, Iordanis. We would like to begin by setting out the context with the macro picture. Elena, what trends in deal activity did you observe this year, and what are the dynamics in both M&A and licensing transactions?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So maybe I go back to 2022 before speaking about this year, because it's interesting to understand how the trend has gone through the last 24 months. In 2022, actually, we were still in an environment where liquidity was more or less there, actually. The COVID just before has given a quite big push to the innovation, a lot of investors actually wanted also to refocus on new technologies in the sector, and they were eager to invest. At the same time, the interest rates were still let's say lower than today, and so liquidity was abundant. So we had actually a period between 2020 and 2021 where liquidity was abundant and investors were quite high in their appetite to invest. Then starting in 2022, the trends has inversed with interest rate going up, and little by little actually, and this has prolonged. This trend has been prolonged during 2023. So there was an asset allocation for investors more towards debt instruments. Liquidity went down, and at the same time, this has affected the risk perception and the valuation of assets and companies. So in 2023, what we have observed is more a tendency to, on the M&A side, to have less transaction actually, because expectation these trends actually started also at the end of 2022. The valuation, the expectation valuation were still quite high for the sellers. Buyers were more risk adverse, so there's been actually less deal. And on the financing side, the liquidity effect has created less dry power for investors, and so companies looking for raising money actually, they have raised less money. And so, for example, just to give you a number, the cash run rate has decreased to 18 months versus almost 30 months. So this has really show how the tendencies has changed. All the elements I mentioned has also an effect on the stock capital markets, of course, where biotech has struggled to IPO in 2022. 2023, there has been few transactions, notably in the US, less in Europe, and in particular in France. So what we are starting to see now, the environment is starting to stabilizing a little bit. We will come back to that for the future because this is more interesting than the past. But all those changes has created other opportunities of financing for biotech. And for example, looking for a licensing deal that has focused more on early stage companies, and sometimes fundraising that has been linked also to commercial contracts. So this has been really very much the trends that we have observed in the last 6 months, more or less.
Many thanks, Elena. As mentioned, we can observe that fundraising and IPOs are very difficult for most biotech. Antoine, do you anticipate that current market conditions, such as inflation or geopolitical tension, will have a negative impact on the transaction in the healthcare sector?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It will definitely have an impact on the market conditions, so the capital market, and we've already seen it in the environment, especially in the US, where like some of the recent IPOs have, not necessarily performed very well, and, Abivax, not to mention them, just also because of the volatility right now in the market. So it's difficult to predict how this will have an impact in the future. As long as there is volatility in the market, it's very difficult to price new IPOs. It doesn't mean that it will be impossible, but it will definitely create more volatility and more challenging for companies. When we look at M&A and licensing, it's, we are in a space where companies are not making decisions because of, the macro environment. I mean, it's more, when you think about specifically biotechs and pharma, it's more like, driven fundamentally by technology, by the science, by the real opportunity overall. So it's a little bit more unclear. But then when you look at more commercial markets, the inflation and the rise of interest rates definitely create more challenging for financing environment, yes.
Many thanks, Antoine. And Iordanis, from your perspective as EIC project manager, what are you feeling?
My feeling is positive. It's not going to happen. The negative climate is not very likely to happen for many reasons. Can I show the data, or if we have? Or is it? That's probably yours, right? I think it helps to provide some data to understand why I don't think it's going to happen. There is a recent study that shows that there is a lot of activity until we get to the slide, which is not that. God. I'm sorry. That says that we have a lot of acquisitions and a lot of collaborations, licensing collaborations and other types of partnerships. The trend is rising. Of course, most of that comes from the States. Also, if you have, if your molecule, if your target has what we call the first-in-class potential, then it's more likely to achieve investments and to strike deals. On the other hand, you have different segments. The biomanufacturing is on the rise, so we're going to be seeing lots of deals in biomanufacturing, and there's going to be activity from the European Commission side next year in biomanufacturing. And also there is new investments that have been decided, 10 and 13 billion from the European Commission. 1/3 of that will go to biotechnology and biomanufacturing. There are deals that are, huge numbers of licensing deals and acquisitions, actually, that happen from the big CDMOs to the smaller companies. If you go even beyond the biotech and the pharma and you look at foundations like NNF, the Novo Nordisk Foundation, probably the biggest foundation in the world, not only in Europe, with a capitalization of 400 billion, bigger than the entire country of Denmark, they are launching cell therapy manufacturing facilities at the level of 140 million. These are all things are indicative that it won't be influenced by this negative climate, and the trend will continue. The same comes also from the experience at EIC. We are getting more and more applications for funding, meaning the activity continues. We have colleagues here in the audience from our accelerator unit. The numbers are staggering. So there is no indication that all what's happening in geopolitics and the climate will influence negatively the activity in biotech and biomanufacturing.
Many thanks, Iordanis. In this context, Nicolas and Hubert from Biotech and EA Biotech company perspectives, do you observe that the market condition impacts the dynamic and relationship between pharma and biotech? And could you tell more the pharma expectation and positioning vis-à-vis the biotech ecosystem?
Yeah, indeed, the market is most difficult. There are higher cost per capital, higher risk, and so it's even more difficult for biotech to finance large advanced trial, big phase 3, etc. And on the other side, pharma has to refill their pipeline. They have cash after the pandemic, and so what we see, I think it's shared with Elena or this slide, that there is more and more early deals, early interest, preclinical stage, pre-IND. It's interesting for biotechs because we reduce the risk in terms of capital invest on the program. We reduced our future revenue, but the revenue per capital invest are still very good, sometimes better. So I think the balance change. There is the balance tipped towards the balance of pharma because cash is king and pharma have cash. But in biotech, we have a lot of innovations. We are highly creative. We can identify new MOA, new targets, create value by maturing these innovations, and this pharma have to refill their pipeline with new innovations. So the balance is equilibrated between pharma and biotech, just a change at the earliest stage, I think.
Thanks.
From our perspective, we're even one step further removed in the research phase, and what we observe is that pharma companies continue to announce landmark partnerships to access external innovations. And while they might be more picky, more cautious, more conservative, their fundamental need to invest in science and technology remains the same. And so the onus is on us, innovative companies, to position our offering in a way that's very aligned with what they are trying to do. So what that means probably focusing less on individual assets and more on technologies that have the potential to really impact across their portfolio and across the various stages of the life cycle of drug development. So, of course, one of these enabling technologies is AI, and no pharma company wants to be left on the platform watching the train leaves the station. So that's what we do at Owkin. We focus on AI to discover novel targets, to de-risk clinical trials, and that resonates with these companies a lot. So that has landed us two fantastic strategic alliances with Sanofi and BMS, totaling about $400 million, and this is at a time when we were at the trough of the investment cycle. So to sum it up, I would say that some AI companies have had the luck or the foresight of being shielded by the macro conditions that were quite tough recently. But obviously, that's not a forward-looking statement.
Many thanks, Hubert. Now we would like to focus on the key drivers of the changing of R&D model. We've heard a lot about the new price and negotiation process from the IRA, including on the prescription drug market and drug discovery. Hubert and Nicolas, what is your view on this significant change, and will this have an impact on your strategy going forward?
Sure. Yes, it will. If you look at the knock-on effects that the IRA has on the pharma company's R&D portfolio strategy, I see two challenges that resonate as opportunities for companies like us. The first one is that biologics will have a longer pricing protection compared to small molecule drugs. And that's something particularly in oncology that can be quite interesting. So I will try to make it work.
Good luck.
I have faith. So at Owkin, we invested this year in June a $50 million investment in spatial biology. And that is quite significant for what is really a new data modality. We're working with 5 of the top cancer hospitals around the world to generate this unprecedented data sets, including 7,000 patients across 7 cancer indications. And this is unprecedented because previous studies are 2 orders of magnitude smaller than this. And we think that with this scale, leveraging AI to really decipher the biology that happens between the tumor microenvironment, and the cell immune interactions between the immune system and the tumor, which is really what spatial biology enables you to do. This will really, we believe, create the next waves of novel targets and treatments. And the link with biologics is that these specific interactions are most likely to be addressed with biologic molecules, and we've seen a lot of traction already from pharma companies wanting to enter into research projects to be able to leverage such an unprecedented data set. And the second one, challenge for pharma companies, is that of reaching peak sales faster. And particularly any delay on reaching potential extended indications will translate into a loss of sales. And so we have a specific value proposition around an AI engine that's called drug positioning to do just that. Is for any given drug candidate or existing drug, the ability to find subgroups of patients that are likely to benefit in other indications. And being able to do that early is something of high interest to pharma companies. And just, I think, this week, we've announced a collaboration with Servier around this particular opportunity.
Yeah, I would like to rebound on the last point. Of course, it's difficult to anticipate for biotech. Now, all the future consequences of IRA, there is at least 2 points also on our view. One in common is indeed now, when we discuss with pharma, they want to launch globally in several indications in parallel, the asset, because the clock starts at the first indications for all indications and not per indication. So it means as a biotech, we need to think development plan, not like a biotech development plan, but for a pharma development plan, meaning not only 1 phase 2 or 2 phase 2 indications, but maybe 3, 4, or 5, in order to make sure that the partner will be able to have at least 2 or 3 phase 3 indications and to launch in 2 indications. So we need to anticipate and to take this into consideration in our development plan, and taking into account the difficulty of the market to raise funds. I think it's reinforced the need for biotech for early deal, because it's really difficult to finance 5 phase 2. The other one element is also it creates a higher pressure on commercial milestone and royalties. Because pharma now are taking really care of their future revenue, biotech need near-term cash, and the pharma are taking long-term cash. So in the negotiation, it clearly changed, I think, the balance. And it's more and more difficult to negotiate very high royalties or very high commercial milestone. It's good for near-term cash, of course.
Okay. And we know that more specialist biopharma are partnering to access capability and innovation, as you mentioned earlier. What are the new challenges for licensing deal, Elena?
Well, maybe we can show the slides on that. Yes.
That's a big challenge.
We have focus. Yeah, so basically, effectively, licensing from biotech still remain a major source of innovation for big pharma. And in these slides, you basically have a track of major licensing deals that have been done recently, with quite important upfront parts, especially for the latest one. And the other interesting things is that actually, as I was saying before, some licensing can happen also on platform and on preclinical molecules, and not just on, I would say, late stage. For late stage, that's what we see more, I would say, M&A targets. I think we have, yes, exactly, another interesting slide here that show that basically you have, for discovery platform, actually, you have quite much activity in the licensing field, sorry. And so basically this is what has characterized the latest months, with quite much deals supported by early stage licensing. I don't know if Antoine, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Elena. Yeah, so I think you have like the 2 trends of the first one. Large pharma is very focused right now on short-term growth, short-term and medium-term growth, and so this is why we've seen a lot of M&A deals for commercial assets or for very late-stage assets that would really drive the growth in the short term. But at the same time, as we can see it here on the chart, you have an increase in the number of early clinical or preclinical, even discovery licensing deals, because it's more and more important for them to secure early science and secure innovation really like at an early phase. And so you have like these dual trends going after their financial goals with commercial assets, but at the same time securing science at a very early phase.
Many thanks, Elena and Antoine. And Iordanis, do you have any additional comments?
Yes, I do. For us, licensing is key, and we have been focusing for the last year. If I can have the slide, please. Of course. And we are focusing even more. And the reason is what you will see in this slide here. This is a Nature reviewed drug discovery paper, having reviewed 380 something, 5, I believe, deals in the States. And contrary to what people hear from the VCs that they want to have clinical data, clinical phase 1 or phase 2 data in order to invest, the trend is changing. The minds are changing, and they understand that if you get the deal earlier, is a more important investment for obvious reasons. What you see in this slide is that 75%, 3/4 of the deals are happening at the preclinical stage. And that was not very known until this publication the last year. So this is really changing the scene entirely. And it gives a lot of room to innovative companies to move and to strike deals. But of course, you need to have licensing skills and capabilities internally. It's not only, if you also see on the same slide, the acquisition deals, almost 50% of that is happening very early. So the picture changes entirely. And then the number of investment, this concerns only cancer here. It rose from 70 billion to 90 billion. This is likely to continue, so that's also an answer to the previous question. So what we do at EIC is, of course, in response to that, and before this publication, we wanted to empower our beneficiaries. We're investing hundreds of millions every year in health. 30–40% of our portfolio is in health. So we want to do, and then if you see on the next slide, how you do that by really educating and bringing your beneficiaries in contact with experts. So we organize workshops, those that you see here. We bring people from Tufts University and other universities in tech transfer offices in the States, or people who have practice in the States and in Europe, or VP alliances, people from Biotechnology and other successful companies. And our purpose is to really empower our companies when they sit on the negotiating table, not to be without weapons, but to be able to negotiate. Because only 10–15% of the companies in our portfolio had skills. That's what we found out, and that's what we're going to publish now, in negotiating and understanding that licensing is like an art. Is more than, it starts with IP strategy, but it's more like an art. So this is very important.
Many thanks, Iordanis. I have a question for you all. How do you project 2024? What are your expectations?
I'll start. I'll let you continue, Antoine. Well, as I was saying before, now the I would say liquidity and the interest rate environment is more stable, at least. Well, I take aside the geopolitical impact because we have not seen maybe everything, but as we speak right now, I mean, we have seen IPOs actually going in the US, so we are expecting the same coming to Europe for 2024. We are seeing more and more actually dual track, triple track deals or process with biotech looking both for fundraising, M&A, and licensing at the same time to maximize the option. And actually, that's usually the advice that we give to biotech to really open up all this the possibility. And I think that as we were saying before, for assets that have data that are a bit more advanced in oncology in particular, or in the right therapeutic areas, there is M&A firepower to have more deals in 2024. For more preclinical and platform company, the licensing parts, and as I was saying before, licensing plus maybe equity share, etc., will be the type of deals that we will see, that we will continue to see in 2024.
My turn. Hopefully a better market, we hope, for all the biotech. And I share your view. I think we will have more and more as we discuss early deals. But also maybe license and collaboration agreements, because pharma want to acquire the assets earlier, but then they need to de-risk as soon as possible, very quickly. And it's not so easy for pharma to integrate all the science, all the mechanism of actions, how to speed up and de-risk quickly in phase 1 or phase 2, the phase 1B, the assets. So this collaboration part, I think, is key between the biotech and pharma, not to lose time and to use this time to support their team to fully integrate the assets, the potential, and leave the baby after phase 2.
Yeah, no, so I agree with what you just said. On the financing side, I agree with Elena. We need to be positive and optimistic, and consider that it will come back. 2024. From my perspective, I think it's more like H2, to 2024 than H1, especially on the IPO side in Europe. Even in the US right now, it's unclear if the few IPOs that were supposed to happen by the end of the year will actually happen, or if they will not be pushed to next year. We're seeing actually on the crossover rounds, like real decrease of the number of crossover rounds. And so there are a number of companies that might be actually thinking about bridging directly from Series B or Series C into the IPO immediately. So we'll need to see how this is playing for the overall financing environment. On the private side, for private financing side, we're still seeing a lot of funds going into VCs. I think VCs are still raising a lot of money. For now, it's mostly for their own portfolio companies, but we're still seeing big rounds for actually high quality assets. So good science, good technologies, a real path to the market. So I think this will continue, and agreed that the M&A and licensing market will remain strong or will actually gain traction. On the licensing side, even potentially more structured transactions to align the interest of pharma and biotechs, because there's a bit of sometimes mismatch on P&L needs on one side, on the other side the needs to get capital. So all of this will, I think, unfold further in the future.
On the AI side, I think there's two ends of the spectrum to consider in terms of predictions for next year. The first one is very early research. The craze that we've seen around LLMs and ChatGPT, I think will really come, and the same thing will happen in biology with the emergence of foundation models, multimodal, not just text, leveraging all sorts of data, and we'll see that powering research in cancer and other disease areas. And then later in research, I think we'll see it's really rubber meets the road in terms of assets that have been discovered with AI reaching clinical developments. We've seen some not so good news recently, and I think 2024 will be a year where we'll continue to have setbacks, but at the same time, some will work, some will not work, some successes with AI discovered assets, and the industry will continue to learn from these as well.
Iordanis?
What I think is very important is you can't have success in everything, so you need really to prioritize. And that means that you target areas where you can compete globally. That's the important thing. Although this is understandable, it's not happening. We are increasingly following a targeted strategy at EIC. We are going as narrow as possible, covering all Europe. So if, let's say, the cardiovascular is an area of activity, then we would go to focus on one segment of that, which we think like cardiogenomics. We organize calls, and then we create a pool of innovative companies, really, and that is very important. And then another thing to create this critical mass for Europe in certain areas that you compete is really to bring all the players together. In coming to licensing, for instance, institutions like EPO or UIPO, big organizations that are involved in the IP strategy. So we try to convince them to move from the IP filing strategy to the IP strategy, and from the IP strategy to make all the stakeholders understand the importance of assets, and then the most likely strategy for most of the innovative companies, we don't reinvent the wheel, is through licensing. They're not going to develop all the way. This is not possible.
Many thanks, Elena, Nicolas, Antoine, Hubert, Iordanis. Now, let's move to some question. What question do you have?
Thank you very much, everyone, and to the speakers. I have a question about medical device. We talked a lot about pharma and the M&A trends. You had very interesting data showing that it comes earlier. could you, maybe our friends from Rothschild, could you comment on what you would see as a trend in medical device? Because I think the dynamics are quite different on the medical device than from pharma. Thank you.
Okay. Can I start? Maybe I start to answer. Yes, there are some differences. Obviously, the economic environment impacts medtech as much as biotech, but I think that the biggest elements that we have right now in medtech for investors is the regulation, the MDR. I mean, this is really, for someone, a real nightmare, or anyway, it's something that is scrutinized quite much by investors. So that's something that has to be put behind, obviously, before, or at least it should be a clear pathway for MDR in Europe if you are still in a developing phase. So that's an important point. And then the second trend we are seeing is medtech with digital health. More and more, actually, the two are put together, which open new option and new business model. Then, generally speaking, there are some funds. We are observing some funds that are more and more specialized, actually, in medtech only, or sometimes medtech plus digital health. So it's an area that is seen, aside from the MDR parts that I mentioned before, slightly less risky, because obviously the go-to-market is usually quicker. But the M&A window is also shorter. So that's because the IP around the medtech obviously is not the same that you have in pharma. So those are the comments I can make. Antoine, I don't know if you want to...
No, I mean, I agree with the thing. Yeah, just on the last point about M&A being shorter, and to your question about like whether deals would happen earlier, it's more difficult in medtech, from my perspective, to have like at least M&A, you know, before the asset is commercial and before there is like, you know, a little bit more, you know, basically content here for companies to look at. So I don't know, but I don't see like, you know, the exact same trend, at least that with what we're seeing in biotechs.
No, it's completely in agreement. In medtech, actually, when I say the window is short, usually the best one is when the product is ready to commercialize or has few commercial data. That's the best moment. Because if before is too early, actually, usually, and afterwards, well, a medtech company with maybe just one product will not have the same commercial firepower as a big group. So, and the innovation in this field can be catch up earlier. So that's why it's important to, if M&A is a goal, to be quite attentive to that, to the timing.
Is there any question?
How do you think that the GLP-1 inhibitors of Novo Nordisk affect the biotech and the investors, the interest of the investors?
Can you repeat about Novo Nordisk? Yes, please. What was the question exactly?
How do you think that Novo Nordisk recent success will affect the interest of the investors?
Because of the obesity drug.
Yep.
I think Novo Nordisk is an example, a classical example of multi-corporation with understanding of all levels of development. I'm not affiliated with them, so there is nothing. But the Novo Nordisk Foundation is in charge of Novo Nordisk, Novozymes, and they have invested in 200 companies. They have a valuation of 400 billion. At the same time, they are making money from insulin. They are investing in other areas. The point is that if you have such a huge umbrella, to be able to maintain that is not an easy thing. So investors are convinced about, in my understanding, about the success of all these organizations that can move forward. The example I brought is very recent. They opened a cell therapy manufacturing plant, 160 million investment, because they they detected that things are moving that direction, and they understood that the problem is that we have many discoveries, but they don't make it to the market because of lack of scaling up capabilities, because of lack of quality, all the problems that are facing also in the States when developing the cell therapies and the gene therapies. So immediately they reacted, and they made the investment, and this is going to really have a positive impact on absolutely on the investment. This is not only lack of experience, I think is very good scouting. I think is that they are following the trends. There are many factors for their success. But for instance, one call for us, one portfolio is about 30-40 million that we do in a targeted area. They made 160 million direct investment in a niche area. We happen to have a portfolio, that's why I know this information. So this is how you should react in my understanding.
And if I can just add for the same question, if you're thinking about like investor interest in the biotech space generally, just the same way as we've seen with COVID, like just a lot of generalist investors coming to the market because there was like a new trend. I think this is not yet, just impacting the biotech space. I think we're seeing obviously a lot of interest and a lot of movement right now in Novo Nordisk and Lilly in terms of like, stock buying, but not necessarily in like the rest of the biotech space, the same way as like what happened in 2020 or 2021 with a lot of generalist investors coming to the biotech space and creating a bit of a bubble. This is not like happening right now in the market.
Bonjour. Quand je regarde le domaine que vous traitez dans les investissements, etc., on a l'impression que la plupart des investissements et la plupart des technologies qui sont en train d'avancer sont dans le domaine de l'oncologie et du cancer. Est-ce que j'ai raison ou pas? Et quels sont les autres domaines dans lesquels il y a des investissements majeurs?
The question is the focus on the oncology for the investments, yes, or is there any other field for the investment?
We saw a slide from you about special multiomics, biomarkers that can monitor clinical treatment, for instance, companion diagnostics. These are areas that are very hot investments-wise. In the solid tumors, all these new therapies, the cell therapies that are developed beyond the classical CAR-T therapies, these are all areas where we're going to be experiencing investments. At EIC, we have a targeted goal at the accelerator level, meaning for innovative companies, that focuses only on novel biomarkers that can guide clinical treatment. That's why I talked before about targeted approach. Not diagnostic, but those that can tell the physician whether somebody is going to have a better or a worse prognosis, or whether a drug would be effective or not. So this is going to be from now on in the precision oncology era with a lot of AI.
And just to add, because the second part of the roundtable was on the IRA, that there's like shifting also in pharma companies' R&D portfolio strategy, and I think we'll see not just oncology, but also immunology, inflammation, cardiovascular research being quite represented as well.
Do you want to comment or no?
No, we can comment on our side also. We are in oncology and immunoinflammation. There was a big trend in oncology, lost a lot of investment all around the world these last decades after the Nobel Prize, immune checkpoint, etc. It clearly changed the paradigm in clinic in oncology, but now we see a equilibrium and more interest for inflammation. And I think there is a GLP-1 molecule in obesity, but the TL1A in IBD with the recent big deal and acquisitions are also illustrating that the field is moving and there is a equilibrium between these different areas.
Many thanks. Since we are almost off of time, we have 1 minute. In one word or one sentence, what is the main message that you would like the participants to take away?
well, continue to innovate first. And second, for financing, think about all the possible options at the same time. So that's what I was saying before. We are still in an environment where opportunity needs to be, really optimized. And so doing a dual track, a triple track, it's important for the financing.
Many thanks, Elena.
Resilience.
Great for the one.
Yeah, I was going to say innovation, and agree with Elena. I think innovation drives everything in this space.
Many thanks, Antoine. Hubert?
I'll go with human intelligence after talking about AI for a while. We're quite excited to see the interface and investing a lot in biology as well, in particular, to make sure that, AI is an enabler more than anything else.
And Iordanis, the final word?
Strategic technological autonomy for Europe is key.
Many thanks. Many thanks to all of you.